This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Well, welcome to the first edition of Red Pill Nation, a daily dose of reality. This is a daily show going over news of the day and giving my opinion on some things, I guess, as well. I'm also going to be running a verbal blog today. I'll be doing that in, some shows where I basically go over what I think on matters of government, things of that nature, if you care. Anyway, the first thing I would like to talk about is the special report that we gave out on Friday based on some information that we had come across on the possibility that Obama ordered a nuclear strike on Charleston, South Carolina. The report came out of the EU Times, and there was seismic evidence to back up the claim. Now, the problem here is that I did further research on the sources for the news article on EU Times, and it appears that they are getting some information from Saoirse Fall. She is part of WhatDoesItMean.com, which is a blog headed up by a guy named David Booth, I believe. And there's some speculation that they may be the same person. They're not sure, or they're related or something of that nature. And there's a lot of back and forth about Saoirse Fall and her reliability as far as articles that she puts out there. So I'm going to say that, and basically say that I do apologize, since I should have researched the sources a little bit better, and unless I see this in further detail in another article, or if somebody can present me some evidence that truly nails this down as being factual, I'm going to say right now that the story is mostly conjecture. Other than there is seismic activity that does point some seismic event happening 600 plus miles outside of South Carolina, and the fact that there was 2 commanders who were fired that were head of the nuclear arsenal, and there is strong evidence to suggest that there are nukes that have gone missing, as reported by Alex Jones on September 3rd. So that I would like to say I'm sorry because I think I dropped the ball on this. Usually I'm very good at making sure the information I receive is factual. In this case, it's up in the air. There are people that think that Saoirse Fall is reliable. There's other people that adamantly deny her claims and say that she is just a con artist that is not to be reliable, that they just spin stories. So if that's the case, again, I do apologize unless there is something that comes about, and I will keep looking because the correlations are very interesting here. I will keep looking to see if there is something more factual that makes this true. So I don't know at this point. It could be all lies. It may be something that is factual. Alright, but moving on. Today was a big story about a woman fainting at an Obama speech on Obamacare. She passed out during his speech about Obamacare and how it was good. There are some that are speculating this was a staged event. They point to the fact that during his campaign, his first one and his last one, there were people passing out all the time. At a lot of events, there was somebody always passing out, and he always used the same lines every time this happened. Look it up on YouTube. Look up Obama speeches, people passing out, and you'll see that there's a correlation that people seem to always pass out at these things. There was somebody always in the back that passed out. He would point to him and say, I think we need medical attention for that person. Somebody's passed out. I guess the heat got to him. And almost every single one of them, it's like it was scripted. And you come to this, and he used similar platform as far as his what he says when the lady passes out, but it's behind him instead of out in the audience. And on cue almost, he turns around, grabs the lady, and then turns back to the mic and says, I've got you. Why does he need to talk into the mic? Shouldn't he be directing that at the woman? Why is he still paying attention to, the audience? If he's really worried about this woman, then that should be the least of his concern. The other thing is the lady to the left of the woman that passed out seems to be looking at somebody in the audience or off camera, and she shakes her head and then kind of gives a little bit of a nod. I don't know if she's communicating with maybe off-camera paramedics, or if there was somebody that was giving her a cue, let's get into action here. But that is something, look at that video and make your own determination. But it seems to go along with stuff he did during the campaign, and could have been a distraction to take people away from the fact that Obamacare really isn't what he says it is. And he didn't take any questions, I don't think, or very few. And, he ended the speech like a minute later. Another thing that came up today was that Homeland Security is spending $80 million on armed guards for civil disturbances. This is going to be for buildings like to protect IRS buildings and other government buildings in upstate New York, in case they have some type of disturbance, people protesting, which we all know now that's at the determination of the president if there's Secret Service there. So if you have Secret Service there, then you could be seen as a terrorist or something of that nature just for enacting your First Amendment right. So, yeah, I think this is disturbing, to say the least, that they're going to be preparing for something. And we already saw last week where the electronic food stamp card went down in many areas, and then in other areas it went unlimited. And when that happened, people lost their mind. These people have a sense that they're entitled to these funds, even though we're paying for them, and they have no desire to get off of them. They have no desire to take responsibility for their own lives, in many cases, not saying all. There are people that really do need help, and unfortunately, because you have people abusing the system so badly, it makes them look bad as well, when they really are looking for some help. And that's why I say voluntarism is the best answer. Having charities out there to provide these services, they would be better managed than what the government's doing. And I think people that sit there and say, but, helping these people out, it's for the betterment of man. That's true. But you don't force people to pay into a system that they may not agree with how it's being run. If you agree with the charity, then you give to the charity. If you don't agree with the charity, you don't give to the charity. It's that simple. I had a discussion with somebody about Planned Parenthood. The reason that many people get upset about it is because it has public funding going in. And you can argue statistically all you want about how having these services is a benefit, but one thing you can't argue is the fact that having anybody that sits there and says that I do not want to have my tax dollars going to this, and then doing it anyway is a benefit. It causes hostility. It causes, people to become angry at the system. If you sit there and have that going to private funding only, charitable donations, that would be a benefit. Let people give if they want to. Don't force them to. And I think that's the problem that we have in this country, is that a lot of people are upset because their funding is going for things that they don't think is appropriate. And then really, our tax dollars are going to pay interest on our debt. But the fact of the matter is that, people see our government spend money, they think it's theirs, and they have a problem with it. And that's understandable. So you have them wanting to take and spend $80 million on this. This is a travesty of justice, because basically it's going against people's rights to demonstrate. And then when you say civil disturbances, then that's probably a soft term for rioting. And if that happens, and I think that what happened with the EBT card issue, it was a test to see if they cut it off or they stopped it, how people would react. Next month, they're getting rid of SNAP benefits from the EBT card system. And it, which is only like 5%. It's not a very big margin of welfare distribution through the food stamp system. But still, that's one thing that they're going to get rid of in the EBT card system. And they could slowly start reducing benefits given on that card, which will cause people to rise up. That's the problem with relying on the system. That's the problem with putting your faith that your family's well-being will be managed by the government. That the government's looking out for your well-being by giving you this funding. You're falling into a trap. When you get free money, for whatever reason, from a governmental body, they're taking it from somewhere else, and they don't really care about you as an individual. This is the federal government we're speaking of. If this was handled on a local level, it would probably be managed better as well. Either handle it locally or handle it through charities. Either or, it would be a better handled service, because the people that are directly affected by those services have access to their city council. They have access to these people in the government that they can go to and say, look, I don't think I'm getting a fair shake here. If they're doing it through a charity, they'll have exacting rules to follow. Because they're dealing with, and they're both dealing with, your local and charities are dealing with a budget. Our federal government is not. They're printing money out of thin air. They're giving themselves all kinds of money. They're pumping the system with all kinds of money. Yellen, they keep making Yellen out to be a prophet, like she predicted the housing bubble and the imminent collapse. She did no such things. These articles they point to, the what she said, there's nothing worded in there that makes it out like she said there's going to be a housing bubble and it's going to burst. She was clueless, just like the rest of them, or playing clueless. She did not say anything about there being a housing bubble. She thought everything was going normally like everybody else, except Peter Schiff, Ron Paul, and a few others. Most had no idea what was going on because they're using the wrong model. Keynesian economics does not work. And the obvious failings of it are there for everybody to see. But instead of going in the right direction, we keep going in the wrong direction. We went from Ben Bernanke to Yellen, who is going to be a lot worse. She wants to keep quantitative easing unlimited. She does not want to taper it off. They're afraid of what the markets will do if they taper it off. But they're pumping new currency into the system daily. And there's going to reach a point where the bubble burst. We're creating a currency bubble. And we have been for a long time, but now they're just ramping it up. And under Yellen, she's just going to keep it going. So it's like somebody with an air pump pumping up a tire, and they just leave it there. And it's just comedically getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but eventually that tire will explode. And when it's the currency, the basis of all your economic structure that does that, you go into economic collapse like that, fast. It's not a slow, deflating. It's a rapid and sudden event. And that's what we have to look forward to under Yellen. What they've said in these, especially Obama when he was up there. I mean, one thing he says is that, the Federal Reserve, which we have to keep separate from the government, for it to work correctly. I mean, that means it's not under the scrutiny of the people. That means that whatever it does, it has nobody to tell it what to do. Nobody to make sure that it stays within a certain confine. That it doesn't do things that are harmful. There's nothing in place to prevent the Federal Reserve from doing something that could harm not only the people, but the system and the economy. We have based our economy off a major failing, which is the Federal Reserve System. That and income tax. The working class are the only class that are double taxed. You're taxed on your income before you get it. You're taxed on your income when you buy goods. And you can include a triple tax because of inflation, which is also created by people that will never be affected by it. Because if you have billions of dollars, heightened gas prices aren't going to affect you. Heightened food prices aren't going to affect you. You are so far outside the spectrum of effect. Because not only does that price hike really cause much of a problem with your financing, but the taxes associated with it can be write-offs. If you associate the need for them in relation to your corporation or business. Many people in the working class don't have that, luxury. And the fact that the grounds that all of our tax laws, our income tax laws are built on are really loose and not well grounded. And there are ways around it. But you have to stand up and you have to fight. There are people out there that have not paid income tax in many years because they know that, and the reality of it is that they have no right to do so. But anyway, I was reading in an article just now that the Canadian healthcare system does have death panels, but in a sense, it's a good thing for this because what they've come up with, a new ruling, is that the doctors cannot step on the rights of the family if they decide that the person wants to have they want to have the plug pulled. They don't want them on life support. Before, they would keep them on life support no matter what. And that's nationalized health care right there. Now they're saying, oops, we made a mistake. So even if the family's saying, we don't want this person on life support, even if you had a will that said, do not have me on life support, they would keep you on life support. Even if there's no brain activity. So that's a failing as well. I mean, you're costing the taxpayers money to keep this person alive that's already told you that they, in a will, that they don't want that, and their family's saying, we don't want this person suffering anymore, and they'd say, no, we've got to keep them on life support, we got to try. So they're rescinding that. There's some issue there. I think it should be at the doctor's discretion as far as decision making along with the families, because the families should have some say in it, but you have to use common sense there. If that person hated that person, If they really didn't like that person, they're saying, yeah, just pull the plug. I would question their motives. So I think it has a lot to do with common sense in that realm. But yeah, I just read that. That came off of Slate. What's it called? Slate.com. And they were talking about death panels, but basically allowing the person to have the right to die without being artificially kept alive. I mean, I think that when you had Dr. Kevorkian back in the early 90s, using assisted suicide, I think that's somebody's right. The individual, if they're dying and they, can't handle the pain, they're suffering, I think it should be up to them what happens in that case. If they want that, that should be on them. If they don't want to have to go through the pain, like with Alzheimer's and cancers and AIDS, if they don't want to have to go through the pain, then yeah. And I think at the local level, that's when we determine, basically, when we allow that. It's a punishable crime to try to kill yourself. I'm glad to see that we're looking at it as a mental health issue. We try to seek help for these people that have failed attempts. But there's underlying social issues that result in a higher rate of suicide attempts. Economic issues especially. If your economy is unstable and you have a high unemployment rate, all these other things correlated with it, you have a high suicide rate. I mean, it's connected. So you work on those other areas. You work on unemployment. You work on other harm reduction strategies in order to make sure that people don't go out and start killing themselves, because that's not a benefit to society as well. And our government is not doing that. Our government is so bloated. It's got all these agencies, and they're more concerned about spying on you, making sure you stay out of the government's way. It's nothing like what it was supposed to be. What we have now is just a monster. And I did a recording. Now, you have to forgive me. I'm going to start doing verbal blogs here and there. And I did a blog that I'm going to play. And basically, it's going over a correlation I found recently. And you'll have to forgive me. I was reading it, and I was rushing through it because my wife got home late today, and I had my daughter, and I couldn't do the recording while I had her because she'd be laughing and screaming and, everything else in the background. She's 3. And so I waited until she got home, like around 8. So I rushed through and recorded this real quick. So this is the first blog, and here we go. In a seemingly crazy and mindless time, where the federal government pulls more and more power from the state and local governments, it struck me that our federal government is like the cuckoo, a bird that is synonymous with crazy, mindless acts. The cuckoo raids the nest of wrens and steals one of its eggs, replacing it with one of its own. This is like what the bankers did 100 years ago. They replaced sound money and untaxed wages with the Federal Reserve and the Internal Revenue Service, while putting in place puppets that they bought with campaign contributions. Woodrow Wilson was one of the first to do their bidding by ratifying the 16th Amendment and bringing in the IRS and Federal Reserve systems. With the hatching of the cuckoo's egg, out pops a bird 3 times the size of the wren's chicks, and it hatches before the wren's eggs, so it can then push the eggs out of the nest. It then, by making a call that sounds like a nest full of wren chicks, keeps the wren busy, bringing it more and more to eat day and night, until it is too big for the small nest it resides in. This is like the massive expansion of our federal government that few have tried to stop. The government, to its liking, has grown far bigger than the Constitution ever allowed, and on the backs of the everyday citizen. It seems mindless to me as to why you would want oppressive law creation to be overseen by those far removed from the individuals and businesses that will be affected. Why is it that allowing those at the county level to oversee the majority of law creation is frowned upon and held as contemptuous, when the individual has far more influence over the laws created and maintained at the local level? Most cheer when they push another right or liberty under the protection of the federal government, not realizing that with every cheer of such actions weakens their voice of protest in the future. Our federal government was never meant to be a federal democracy, but a federal republic. The reason for this is clear. Under a federal republic, you do not have federal intrusion into the acts of the individual or the markets. They maintain control over state and local laws through the courts. Any unconstitutional law can be argued in front of the courts up to and including the Supreme Court to render a verdict into the constitutional nature of such laws. Encroachment on state and local laws is held at a minimum by strictly following the Constitution and common law. With a federal democracy, things that should be argued before state and local officials is rushed to the top. And all-encompassing laws are passed, disregarding the individual's rights and freedoms. The more and more the federal government takes on, the more oversight is created. Those that find this system great, when the laws that passed did not step on what they cherish, will show outrage and disgust when the system they held create steps that they helped create steps on their freedoms and rights, which will happen since corporate manipulation is a key negative to a democracy. Allowing large corporations to influence laws and regulations to win public favor and destroy competition leads to the destruction of individual rights. One of the key factors that is lost is choice, since only the few make the decisions for the masses. The number of options an individual has throughout his day-to-day life dry up. Let me reread that. Since only the few make the decisions of the masses, the number of options an individual has throughout their day-to-day life dries up. This is happening as we speak. Only 5 companies own all the TV stations in this country. Only 2 main companies own all car manufacturers. The list could go on. Consolidation of power creates consolidation of markets and of rights. So the next time you call this country a democracy, think of the cuckoo chick and the tired wren forcibly laboring to feed this growing monster that it was led to believe was hers. Alright, well, that was just my take. I call it the cuckoo. And basically that's what our government is right now, is cuckoo. But anyway, I want to thank you for joining me for my first daily dose of reality show. I'm going to have it every night, or almost every night, depending on if I have the time to do it that night, at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, so that's 7:30 Central Standard Time. We will also be having our normal show on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so I hope you join us for that. We also have the Red Pill blog. If anybody would like to be a contributor to that, just let me know. You can contact me on the Red Pill Nation group on Facebook. Nathan Davis up there. Or you can go to libertythemovement.com and sign up as a member there and contact me that way. Or you can contact me at redpillnation@libertythemovement.com and let me know that way. And also, again, we have our Red Pill Nation up on libertythemovement.com. You can go to libertythemovement.com and then go to Red Pill Nation up at the top, and that's where everything resides, our show archive, and we're building different things in there as well. So thanks again for joining tonight, and as always, I want to say keep your ear to the ground and don't do like I did. Don't fall for conjecture. I usually am pretty good at that. Again, I'm going to keep an eye on this story and see if anything else comes up other than from this one news source, and see if there is some legitimacy to it. There are some strange correlations there, but I don't know if they pan out to be connected. So again, thanks for listening. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.